What if the most dangerous moment you could ever have in the wild is not when you are running, but when you are broken, not when you are loud, not when you are reckless, when you are grieving? There is a documented case from the Maasai Mara in Kenya. A wildlife researcher, a man who had spent 14 years working within meters of lions, walked into the bush 3 days after his wife died. Same trail, same time of day, same equipment. The lions behaved differently, not aggressively, not curiously. They tracked him. For 2 hours, 4 lions followed this man through terrain they had shared with him hundreds of times before, and had never once treated him as anything other than a familiar presence. Something had changed, and the question that haunted every researcher on that team was, what did those lions read in him that his own colleagues had missed? If that question just reached somewhere deep inside you, stay with me, because what science has discovered about the relationship between human emotion and predator behavior is one of the most extraordinary and quietly terrifying things I have ever researched for this channel. If you are new here, subscribe right now. We cover the stories that live at the intersection of science, survival, and the parts of nature that most people are not brave enough to examine. You will not regret being here for this one. Animals read the world differently than we do. Where we rely on words, logic, and social performance, they rely on chemistry, movement, electricity, and pressure. They are tuned to frequencies of the living world that human beings lost access to somewhere between the discovery of fire and the invention of the smartphone. The great white shark can detect a single drop of blood in 25 gallons of water. The bloodhound can follow a scent trail that is 4 days old across 40 miles of broken terrain. The wolf can hear sounds at frequencies 4 times beyond human range. The elephant can detect the infrasonic rumble of a grieving herd member from over 6 miles away. These are not supernatural abilities. They are biological instruments, refined over millions of years, for reading the emotional and physiological state of every living thing in their environment. And here is what those instruments have been quietly detecting about you. By the end of this video, you will understand something about predators and about yourself that will permanently change the way you move through the natural world. When a human being is sad, genuinely deeply sad, the body does not simply feel different, it becomes different. Cortisol floods the bloodstream. Adrenaline regulation collapses. The immune system suppresses. Breathing patterns shift, becoming shallower, more irregular, less rhythmic. Muscle tension changes. Posture collapses inward. Micro-expressions flicker across the face at speeds too fast for conscious control. Eye movement patterns alter. The voice, even in silence, changes the tension in the throat and jaw in ways that affect the sound of every breath. And perhaps most critically, the scent changes. Human emotional states produce measurable, distinct chemical signatures in sweat, breath, and skin secretion. Researchers at Utrecht University confirmed in 2012 that humans can chemically detect fear and disgust in the sweat of strangers, with accuracy far above chance. If humans can do it, what can a predator do with a sensory system built over 40 million years specifically to read the physiological state of living things? The answer is both fascinating and deeply unsettling. Dr. Mark Beckhoff, a behavioral ecologist at the University of Colorado, has spent decades documenting emotional recognition across species. His research confirms that large predators, particularly wolves, big cats, and bears, demonstrate consistent behavioral shifts in the presence of emotionally compromised prey. Not all predators attack, not immediately, not obviously, but they notice, they recalibrate. They begin the quiet, patient process of reassessment. Because, in the language of predator biology, a creature whose chemistry has changed, whose posture has shifted, whose movement has become irregular and internally focused, is a creature that has stepped outside the protective field of collective awareness. And that is the signal every apex predator has been reading for millions of years. Let us go back to the Maasai Mara. The researcher, we will call him Daniel, had worked with the same lion pride for 11 years. He knew their territory. He knew their patterns. He had been accepted, in the way that long-term field researchers sometimes are, as a known and non-threatening presence in their world. 3 days after his wife's death, Daniel made a decision that every grief-stricken person understands. He went to the one place that made him feel close to something real. He went back to the bush. He was not reckless. He was not careless. He followed every protocol. But his body was not the same body those lions had spent 11 years reading. His cortisol levels were clinically elevated. His movement, documented on footage from his field camera, was slower, more inward, less spatially aware. He was physically present and psychologically somewhere else entirely. The pride's dominant female, a lioness the team had named Sarah, detected him from an estimated 300 meters downwind. What happened next took 40 minutes of careful documentation to fully understand. Sarah did not charge. She did not display. She moved, with 3 subadult members of the pride, in a wide lateral arc that placed the group between Daniel and his return path to camp. This is called a containment approach. It is the behavioral signature of a predator that has identified a target and begun managing the geometry of an eventual confrontation. Daniel's field partner, watching from a vehicle 300 meters away, activated the horn before it escalated. Daniel turned around, made eye contact with Sarah across 80 meters of open grass. She held his gaze for 7 seconds. Then she turned and walked slowly back into the tree line. 7 seconds. That is how close it came. And the only thing that changed between the 100 safe walks and that one dangerous one was the chemistry of grief inside one man's body. I need to pause here and ask you something, because this is the part of the research that stayed with me long after I finished writing this script. Do you believe animals can sense human emotion? Not just domesticated animals like dogs, but wild predators? Because the scientific community is more divided on this than you might think, and the people who disagree will surprise you. Drop your answer in the comments right now. I genuinely want to know what you believe, and why. Here is where the science becomes something more than science. Because the researchers who documented Daniel's encounter did not stop at behavioral observation. They went deeper. They wanted to understand whether what Sarah detected was emotional state specifically, or simply physiological irregularity. The distinction matters enormously. If predators detect emotion, that implies a level of social and emotional intelligence in apex predators that fundamentally reframes our understanding of their cognition. If they detect only physiology, cortisol, breath pattern, muscle tension, that is a purely mechanical reading of biological data. Extraordinary but not emotionally complex. What the follow-up research revealed was neither one nor the other. It was both, and something beyond both. Neuroscientist Dr. Lori Marino, whose work on animal cognition has been published in over 100 peer-reviewed papers, has documented that large predatory mammals, particularly big cats and wolves, possess mirror neuron systems functionally similar to those in humans. Mirror neurons are the neurological architecture of empathy. They fire not only when an animal performs an action, but when it observes another creature performing or experiencing the same. In plain language, apex predators do not merely detect that something is chemically wrong with you. They experience a neurological echo of what you are feeling. They do not have a word for grief. They do not have a framework for loss. But their nervous system, ancient and precise and built for exactly this kind of environmental reading, registers your emotional state as a signal that travels from your body chemistry through the air between you and into the deepest layer of their predatory calculation. They know something has broken in you. They do not understand it the way another human would, but they feel the shape of it. And in the architecture of predator behavior, a creature that is broken, that is inward, that has stopped fully occupying its own presence in the world, is a creature that the wild has always quietly marked. Daniel returned to the field 6 weeks later. He had taken time. He had grieved properly, with people, with support, with the deliberate work of beginning to return to himself. When he walked that same trail, Sarah was there, same distance, same time of day, same open grass between them. She looked at him for 3 seconds. Then she lay down. Not indifference, not tolerance, recognition. The same researcher, the same presence, the same chemical signature that 11 years of proximity had taught her to read as safe, as known, as not a disruption to the balance of her world. He had come back. Not physically, he had never left, but in every way that a predator's ancient and extraordinary senses can measure a living thing. He had come back. The lesson this story carries is not simply about predators. It is about what grief does to our presence in the world. When we are broken, we become invisible to ourselves, and visible, in an entirely different way, to everything around us. Awareness is not just survival. It is identity. It is the signal you send to the natural world that says, I am here, I am whole, I am present. The moment that signal weakens, the world around you notices. And in some corners of that world, something ancient begins to recalculate. Thank you for staying with this story all the way to the end. It is one that stayed with me long after the research was finished. And I hope it stays with you too. If it moved you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe if you have not already. And next week, dive deeper into the next episode.